The origin of the war can be traced back as far as the 11th century when territorial expansions by both the Khmer Empire, the forerunner of modern-day Cambodia, and Dai Viet, the forerunner of modern-day Vietnam, led to overlapping spheres of influence. A series of wars then took place in the 12th century, resulting in centuries of friction, discord, and animosity. Then in the 17th century, through migration, Vietnamese settlers gained control of the sparsely populated eastern region of Cambodia that today comprises the southern region of Vietnam. These events helped sow the seeds of ethnic tensions between present-day Cambodia and Vietnam. Then during the 1970s, Indo-China's charged political and security climate further aggravated this historical animosity, as the Cambodians believed that the Vietnamese intended to dominate and take control of the whole Indo-China region. In the 1940s, during the period of French colonization, communist movements were founded in Vietnam and Cambodia. These communist movements functioned in close association with Vietnamese communists leading and training their Cambodian counterparts. In the 1950s, after the French were defeated and subsequently withdrew from Indo-China, Vietnam was divided by the Geneva Peace Accords into North Vietnam, which was led by a communist regime, and South Vietnam, which formed a democratic government. Also, in compliance with the Geneva Peace Accords, Vietnamese forces withdrew from Cambodia. Vietnamese communists advocated the Marxist-Leninist brand of communism, while the Cambodians were Maoist communists. Cambodian communists were called Khmer Rouge and were led by Pol Pot, who later murdered millions of his people in one of the bloodiest genocides in history. Both revolutionary movements prevailed in April 1975, with the Khmer Rouge overthrowing the US-backed Cambodian government and Vietnamese communists entering Saigon, ending the American-sponsored South Vietnamese regime, and reunifying the country under a Marxist government. However, the apparent communist solidarity between Vietnam and Cambodia was superficial, for as early as 1973, even before they had won their revolutions, the Khmer Rouge regularly ambushed North Vietnamese patrols that had crossed over into Cambodia. In 1974, armed clashes broke out between Vietnamese and Cambodian forces. And in May 1975, barely 1 month after the Khmer Rouge took power in Kampuchea, which was their new name for Cambodia, they invaded the Vietnamese island of Phu Quoc, just off the Cambodian coast. Khmer Rouge forces also attacked Tho Chu off the Vietnamese mainland. Vietnamese forces quickly recaptured these islands and retaliated by invading the Kampuchean island of Co Vai. They withdrew from Co Vai in August of that year. In April 1977, Khmer forces made incursions into the Vietnamese town of Chau Doc in An Giang province, and later in September, in what was a prelude to full-scale war, they sent thousands of soldiers into Tây Ninh province. In response, the Vietnamese sent 8 divisions that threw back the attackers. In January 1978, Vietnamese forces entered Kampuchean Svay Rieng province, where they tried to incite the local population to rise up in revolt against the Khmer government. However, no uprising occurred, forcing the Vietnamese to withdraw from Kampuchea. In January 1978, the Khmer government initiated a purge of suspected disloyal military officers. Consequently, the commanders in Kampuchea's eastern military zone mutinied in protest of the purge. Government forces arrived and quelled the mutiny, but many of the rebelling commanders, accompanied by their military units, escaped to Vietnam, where they were welcomed by the government there. The Vietnamese Army helped reorganize these Kampuchean units into a rebel movement whose aim was to overthrow the Khmer regime. In June 1978, Vietnam made preparations to invade Kampuchea. The Vietnamese government wanted to end the Khmer Rouge cross-border raids into Vietnam that had caused thousands of civilian deaths and great loss of properties. Vietnam also distrusted China's intentions in Indo-China. Because China and Cambodia were allies, Vietnam saw itself surrounded by hostile forces that could invade in the future. The acrimonious Soviet-Chinese relations that had begun in the 1960s also fueled tensions, since Vietnam was backed by the Soviet Union while Cambodia was supported by China. By November 1978, Vietnam was massing its forces along its southern border with Kampuchea. Vietnam had taken the precaution of securing its northern region against a possible Chinese invasion by signing the Vietnamese-Soviet Treaty of Friendship and Cooperation, which guaranteed Russian military intervention in case of a Chinese attack. To counter the Vietnamese military buildup, Cambodia deployed 14 divisions along its border with Vietnam. Khmer forces were equipped with Chinese weapons, which had begun to arrive in Cambodia in large quantities. Following a diversionary attack on Krati, 13 Vietnamese divisions, supported by artillery and air cover, advanced through the Cambodian border in the direction of Phnom Penh. Khmer forces engaged using conventional warfare but were quickly overwhelmed by the much stronger Vietnamese army. Vietnamese tanks now raced down the highways toward Phnom Penh, reaching the capital on January 7, 1979. Pol Pot and other high-ranking government officials fled to the western region of Cambodia near the border with Thailand, where they set up a resistance government. In Phnom Penh, a new government was formed, mainly comprising former Khmer Eastern Military Zone exiles and backed by Vietnam. The one-sidedness of the war revealed the marked contrast between the steely resolve of the Vietnamese, who had recently experienced many decades of wars with France and the United States, against the relatively untested Cambodian army. Furthermore, the disparity in military strength was overwhelming. Vietnam's armed forces included over 600,000 soldiers, 900 tanks, and 300 aircraft, while Cambodia's forces consisted only of 70,000 soldiers and a few tanks and aircraft. Another crucial factor was the Khmer Rouge's brutal repression of the Cambodian people, which saw millions perish from executions, tortures, forced labor, starvation, and diseases, which made them physically, emotionally, and mentally exhausted and unable to oppose the Vietnamese invasion.